This is bad omen. Everything seems to be working right away tonight.
Cancel class and go home.
Yep. All right. Last week we began to branch away from the box as we know it. We talked about Fusion 360. We talked about 3D printing. Sort of took a break from the box, and tonight we sort of vector back towards the box, but in a really advanced direction. One of the great things about the Vectric Corporation is that they want everybody to cut boxes, to cut plaques, to cut designs in furniture, etc., etc. And they have the business model that includes the sale of items to support cutting three-dimensional designs into whatever wood that you want for your project. They make money selling the software, and then they make a little bit of money selling the designs, the three-dimensional designs. And from that point of view, the business model makes sense, because in order to create a three-dimensional design using their format, you need the product they call Aspire, and they put a $2,000 price tag on one copy of the software. So they really make it. They created the business model where they're going to sell a lot of little designs, and we're going to look at several of them tonight to see what's potential for your future designs. Now, I mentioned last week that as of the beginning of last week's session, we had covered all of the detail needed to complete the course and finish your box. The designs that we've covered so far, or I should say the design techniques that we've covered so far, put you in a position with a wide number of choices as to how you want to build your design. And I know that because everyone is fresh using the software, that right now you're probably more focused on what you think you want the design to look like, and you're not necessarily at the point where you've got that design completed in the software and you're ready to cut. So I recognize that there's going to be several days, several weeks of additional study on your own to come up with that final design. So as we step forward, we'll complete the formal class next week. But then in the future, after next week, I intend to spend a lot of time in the wood shop. So as you need some help with the details, bring your PC in and we'll sit down together and work out whatever details you're having difficulty with. And as I mentioned last week, and you'll see it on any homework assignment from here on out, when you think you're ready to cut that first box, schedule some time with me, and we will sit down and go step by step through all of the process of formalizing a tool path and then doing the cuts on the machine. I'm not guaranteeing there will be error-free. And we've already demonstrated. We demonstrated with Bob's first cut and last night with Sam's first cut that there might be some details in the design that's not perfect when we go about doing the cut. So there's a little bit of risk. But over time, as you go through the process several times, it'll become very natural. And I've got some volunteers that maybe we can document the process a little bit better so that you can have a checklist to go through. And we'll work on that after the class is over with. And with that, we're getting close. We've got one more session tonight and one more session. I see some questions. Tom, did you have anything? Oh, homework assignments. Let's just run through them real quick. I've asked everyone to glance at Thingiverse and printables.com. You see where it's so easy to download any model that you might like. Download it. They'll typically come down in STL format, and that would be a direct path to the computer room, to the workshop. There's a slicer there on the workshop PC that would convert it into the G code for the printer. Okay. The 3D print process, that's really documentation. Everybody glance at it. It's a book. It formally steps through in a more organized way all of the words that we spoke last week. Okay. Oh my goodness, there's a video, 3D printing for beginners. Did everyone watch that? Okay. Fusion 360. Did it make sense? The little video that introduces Fusion 360 and builds a toolbox. Does that make sense? Okay. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier, once you've completed your box design, schedule time with me and we'll go through the details of doing your first cut. Okay, tonight's session is a little more relaxed. Don't have a lot of PowerPoint cells to work from. I'm going to mainly use the software itself to explain the 3D print, to explain how to manipulate three-dimensional designs in the Vectric Pro software. They're called components by Vectric. They call the 3D design a component. And the VCarve Pro provides all of the tools to import a component. The source quite often is Vectric itself, either through the clip art that they provide free, or a design that you've purchased and downloaded. Oh, by the way, I was browsing the Design and Make site today, and they do have emblems for military service. They've got designs that focus on using a firearm. They've got designs that focus on a holiday season, maybe a Christmas or an Easter or others. So they create the products that they think our community is going to want. So we'll talk about that tonight. We'll also mention the anniversary box tonight, and that is a 3D. That is a box, a slightly larger box than what we have for the class. We'll go through the details of the anniversary box and make suggestions on how, in the future, you could modify it for your family purpose. as we begin to think about jumping into the three-dimensional world, let's look backwards for just a moment. We've covered all of the designs, modifying the V-carve, using V-carve techniques to modify a design. We've talked about using text or drawing a pattern and you're having the V-carve follow it. We've imported bitmaps and converted them to vectors. So we've sort of set the stage for the basic design. And then we talked a little bit, we did 2 homework videos on, maybe 3 homework videos on inlays, importing simple drawings, using the inlay techniques to create a male object on a different colored wood to insert into the female cut. So we've covered all of that. Tonight we're solely going to focus on the 3D models. How we can take a component, bring it in, manipulate it, join it with other components to merge 3D objects together and to obtain the display that you want. That's tonight. Let's repeat some words I've already spoken. For CAD purposes, we can only do 2-dimensional drawings. That's just a limitation of the software. But the software also allows us to import 3D components from clip art, from design and make. We have some pre-configured files that are available on joesboat.org, and we can bring in files from other 3-dimensional modeling programs. We can bring files in, and I'll demonstrate that tonight. Once we import a 3D component, the V-carve Pro software provides the tools to change the size of that 3D object. I mentioned earlier to merge that 3D object with other 3D objects. Tonight we're going to see where once we do a 3-dimensional cut, it provides the ability to add textual elements on the curve of the 3D object. These are all called modeling tools, and they're really, as I mentioned earlier, the business of supporting the 3-dimensional industry. First one is clip art. Now, was some clip art downloaded with the software that you downloaded? Did you notice if there was a complete set of clip art? I have on joesboat.org, and one of the homework assignments was to download it and put it in a specific folder on your PC. And that, as far as I can determine, is a very complete 100% of what's available for free from Vectric Corporation. I want to demonstrate clip art for just a moment, and I'm going to switch over to, let's see what we have here. I have a blank box. If I look at the clip art tab on the left hand in the design tools, I've got foundation folders there named clip art, design and make, and gadgets. We're only going to talk about the first 2 tonight. The clip art folder, as I said, I believe to be a very complete set of what's available for free. And you can see the names of the subfolders here that's organized by the type of design. Animals is the one that's sort of very useful for a quick design. Let's scroll through animals. Oh, there's one that a friend of mine would have loved. It's an eagle. And notice that it's giving us the clip art for the eagle in 3 formats. There is the eagle by itself. There's the eagle pre-positioned in a dish. And then there's an eagle surrounded by simple profile cuts that will sort of allow the eagle to stand out, but still be embedded in the wood. The first eagle, the one that's by himself, is useful for a design where the eagle sits on top of a piece of wood. So we're taking the face of a piece of wood, we'll put the eagle in the center of it, and the milling is going to take away the depth of the eagle surrounding it, ending up with a flat surface with the eagle popping out. Okay? We'll go through that process here in a few minutes. But going down further, you can see that wherever they have a pattern, they tend to give you those 3 formats. The dish, the standalone 3-dimensional object. I love the griddle. I love the gorilla here. Wouldn't somebody love that as a present? Horses' heads are pretty popular. A lot of kids might love a horse's head. But again, the dish with the animal already present, the animal by itself, and then the one where the animal itself would be embedded in the wood. Let's go back to the eagle. Let's start with the eagle. And do I want this? No, let's not use this as a foundation. Let's switch over. Let's use this one. Now, simply stated, a component in the 3-dimensional view is nothing but a vector. So I'm set to the 2-dimensional view. I've got a workpiece, I think it's 10 by 10 or something close to that. Let's bring the eagle in. I'm simply going to double click on the eagle, and it immediately put the eagle in the center of the workpiece. And since right now it's nothing but a vector, I can move it around wherever I want it. So if I were putting it on the box top, I could easily move it, position it on the box top wherever I wanted it. For tonight's demo, I really don't, it makes no difference, so I'm just going to leave it where it is. Now it by itself has everything embedded in the component to tell Vectric how to cut it. Okay. Let's switch over to the 3D view, and let's just look at some dimensions of the eagle. Let's see, if I touch here, I can see it's 5.49 inches wide. And if I touch here, you can see it's 5.549 inches high. Okay, everyone can see the numbers. Just double checking, everyone can make them out. Vectric gives us some tools down below. The first one The one all the way to your left is will tell me the total depth of the model that's currently displayed. Let's open it, and it's 0.4724. That means that the model itself is approximately a half an inch high. Okay. Now that is the total depth of the model at this point in time. If I look at the next item over and open it, you'll see the same number, and that is the depth of the selected component. Okay. Now, of course, we only have one component loaded right now, so it's telling me that I total of 0.47 inches. But it's the fact that it's giving me a number of the total and a number of the individual component is an upfront indication that the software expects that you could have multiple components mounted at the same time. Okay? And you heard me use the word merge earlier, merging components together. So I can work with, at some point in time, I could work with two components at the same time, manipulate their depth relative to each other, and either leave them as two separate components, or maybe I could join them together so I could copy them someplace else as a singled component. And the term that Vectric uses for that is called bakes. You can bake it. That will take two components, merge it together as a single component, and now I can copy it. And if I look back at manipulating vectors in Vectric, simple two-dimensional vectors, if I had multiple vectors on the screen at the same time and I select them all, I have a function called group. Remember that? I can group them together, they become one, I can copy them, the same principle. There we're working with simple vectors. Here we're working with rather complex components. You know, if we had a spire here and we could look inside the details of this component, we would see many, many little, maybe triangles, maybe single lines. I see some lights going off around the room. I haven't seen any questions yet. But really, we're doing the same thing with these components that we have the ability to do with vectors. Right now, I know the depth of this model, and I know that earlier when I created this file, I created a file that's 0.75 inches thick. Excuse me, the workpiece is 0.75 inches thick. Now, if I have a 0.47 inch model and I were to cut it and clear out everything around it, I'm left with 1/4 inches of material. Okay, so I'm a little bit conservative here. I don't want the bit to work that hard. So, do I really need an eagle image that stands up 1/2 an inch? Do I really need that? I'm going to say no. And so I can easily go back to this particular tool, and I can say, let's make it 0.25 inches. It takes a moment, but he's now manipulated that model. All the internal lines are still the same, but he's manipulated that model to where it's only 1/2 inch high. Okay,
Quarterly plan.
thank you. Thank you. Boy, don't I wish I could pretend that was not a Freudian slip. Don't I wish I could take credit for setting it up for you guys to complain. I would. Hindsight.
I saw what you did there. That was good.
Okay. Now, let's pretend for a moment that this is exactly where we want it on the board, and that maybe in the future I'd put a model down in the right-hand corner. Just leave some space open, and maybe I'll include some text here later on. But for right now, let's just go through the steps of using the three-dimensional cutting tools to show you how it's going to look, or show you how it's going to provide a surface for you to add other design work to. To do that, let's simply draw a rectangle, and I'm going to draw the rectangle close to the workpiece. Okay, surrounded it. Now let's go ahead and switch out of the design mode over into the toolpath mode, and let's speak to the two three-dimensional toolpaths that we have available to us in VCarve Pro. The first one, the one that the mouse pointer is currently on, is the rough cut, the three-dimensional rough cut toolpath. The rough cut toolpath is typically executed with a 1/4 inch end mill, or maybe an 1/8 of an inch end mill. But its function in life is to clear out material so that the detailed bits do not have as much work to do to fully cut the three-dimensional design. I'm going to open that tool path. Now, notice what popped up here. Material setup. It's allowing me to manipulate where the model exists within the depth of the wood. Think about this. I've got 3/4 of an inch of material, and I've got a 1/4 inch three-dimensional design. Do I want that in the middle, or do I want it on the top? I think I want it on the top. Let's see how that works. Clearances look okay. I'm calibrating from the material service. Let's say okay. Now I am in the tool path for the rough cut, for the rough machining tool path. I have several methods available to tell the tool path about the model that I want him to cut. Starting at the top, I could use the model boundary. Okay. Going down, I could use the material boundary. The next, I can use the selected vector. In this case, I do have a vector available. It's in magenta around the material. And then going down, the selected level. The model boundary is simply that. If I were to choose model boundary, it would just look around the edge of the eagle. If I select material boundary, it would give me something approximates what I have for the vector. the rectangular vector. If I go down to the selected level, I'll speak in more detail to that later, but Vectric provides us a technique where we can stack three-dimensional models on top of each other, specifying the order of the cut or the order of the merge. It's called a component tree, and we'll speak to it before the night's over with. For right now, I only have one level, and I can tell that if I look at the top of the screen, here it's showing me level 1, or if I look on the left-hand side in the design area, and I look at the components, here it's also giving me I will call this one the master component tree. Now everyone here, with the exception of Chris, is seeing version 12 for the first time. Just as an aside, much of the up top information on level, layers, sheets is very new on version 12. In prior versions, we had to go over to the design side and pick one of the tabs to get into either of those three controls. But now they've given us that information directly on the workspace, making it easier and simpler to get to. So, and repeating myself, we only have one level at this point in time. And I guess let me get out of okay, I'm fully out of the rectangular tools now. So I'm selecting the outside vector, and I'm selecting the component itself. And I've told the rough tool path that I'm using the vector to bind as the bounds of the cut. And I'm going to calculate it. Okay. Doesn't look like much. Let's go ahead and preview the selected tool path. Doesn't look like much. But if we look at it on the edge, you'll see that he's cut about 1/4 inch into the workpiece, and he's left some material here for the finer bit to handle. I'm going to close out of this for a moment. I'm going to put things nice and straight again. That is our first execution of the rough cut tool path. Let's go into the fine tool path, and we're going to see the same four material, the same four set of controls to determine what I'm going to cut. But I'm using a little bit different bit right now. Instead of the 1/4 inch end mill, here I, by default, went to a 1/16 inch tapered ball nose. Now, of the bits, and there's one in the set that you purchased, and there's one in the set that you have. Chris has a set also. This is probably the most expensive bit in that set. This is a bit that sells in the $50 price range, 50 something bucks. And it can do fine detail work, very fine work. So that is the natural bit that I would choose doing a three-dimensional cut. Yeah, I'm going to use either an offset or a raster. I think I'll use an offset. Let's go down and calculate it.
What's the difference between the two, Joe, the offset and raster?
The one of them, don't ask me which one. One of them is going to pick an angle, and it's going to use that angle from a starting corner all the way across the workpiece. And he's going to adjust his height as it needs to, as it goes across the three-dimensional component. The other one is going to start in the center, and he's going to work outward until he finally reaches the outside of the material. I'll slow it down a couple of points from now, and we'll see both of them in action. We touched on a couple of times how I can slow down the emulator to see the actual movement of the cutting tool. Okay, we'll focus on that a little bit later. Okay, so here we are. Let's go ahead and preview that tool path. Okay, I've got a three-dimensional object that's 1/4 of an inch above the surface of the material, and if I tilt the material, you can see, okay, you can see the depth of the device. You can see that the material left is about 1/2 inch. Okay. That's the basics of three-dimensional modeling. That's the basics. Now, it was really neat when I went through the animals in the clip art. Okay, each one of the animals came as this one as an individual component. It came in a dish, and oh, by the way, that's really baked in a dish, so that they are only one tool path. Okay, one component. Okay, and then the one that has the jagged edge around. Of course, that one would create the least amount of dust. Here, by going 1/2 inch into the total workpiece, I've created the most amount of dust, and the dish is somewhere in between. You know, there you are just cutting the material that needs to be removed from that. I should say the dust that needs to be removed from that material. So now this is 3D. This is a 3D capabilities of the tool of the system. I see a lot of questions.
What if all I want is the eagle's head? I don't want any background. So in other words, maybe I wanted to make 10 of those and put them on 10 different plaques as I color them differently.
Using the tools that I've shown so far, okay, I can adjust the depth of the model. I showed subtracting from the standard 0.47 inch that comes from Vectric. I could increase that to 3/4 of an inch if I wanted to.
Right.
So yeah, I could easily using a 1 inch, I could cut 3/4 of an inch down run the bandsaw around it, okay? Or maybe I could draw a vector around and cut it on the machine as a profile cut. So just completely cutting the, in this case, the eagle out of the material. Okay? Let me demonstrate that too. I won't fully demonstrate it. I'll show you the technique to accomplish that. If I go over to the big okay, let's go back into design mode. In this instance, I'm dealing with the differences between 11 and 12. I'm finding the tools in a different location than what I remember. They've given us at the bottom of the design tab a set of modeling tools, and the one all the way to the left, let me get back here, get into 2D mode. I don't want that, I want that. I only want the component itself selected. If I go back into the components, if I go back into the design and I look down below this modeling tool, did you see the name pop up? It says create vector boundary around selected components. Here I have the selected component, and here I select that tool. Now it's not easy to see, but I have created a vector around the edge of the components, and maybe if I'm good, I can select it. So now keep in mind that I've got some cuts here that a 1/4 inch end mill's clearly not going to fit. Okay, so some creative work with a combination of tools might be needed to fully cut out. Okay, it might be easier to not worrying about cutting here and do that later on with the bandsaw. But here, using a combination of techniques and tool paths, I could first cut the three-dimensional object above the background as I've demonstrated, and then with another tool path I could select this and the proper bit and cut out the profile. So that's, it's a combination of techniques. Sam?
Can you also use your carving chisels?
Pardon?
Can you also use some of the carving tools to get into that?
Possible.
Rather than a bandsaw?
Sure. That'd be your choice. And yes, you could. At some point we got the transition from what we have created using the tool to the manual cleanup.
Yeah.
Now, next week, by the way, we are going to focus on manual cleanup of a standard box. With that in mind, we're 45 minutes in. I'm a little bit tired, so let's take that break early. Let's take 5 minutes and resume at 10 minutes to 5. Okay? Let's switch back to the PowerPoint to keep me honest here. We've talked about clip art, okay? And during that long presentation, we have covered the basics of the 3D modeling tools built into the software. We haven't shown all options, and I doubt that we can show all options in one evening. But I think we've done enough to get you ready to handle some homework assignments tonight that will be more precise on the tools. Let's spend a moment talking about design and make. I mentioned it earlier, and we've mentioned it several times. It is a website managed by Vectric Corporation. Its primary purpose is to sell you models, and they're reasonably priced. I'll go through, we'll touch on some details later. But they are also in the business of selling some software and some machine plans where you can build your own CNC machine. I won't get into those details tonight, just mentioning that it's available from them. Let's go into the store. I mentioned earlier seasons. Seasons are very lucrative for design and make sales. Spring is coming, and the thoughts of birdhouses are in the air, and they are selling away nice little trinkets. I'm just scrolling now. They are creative in creating packages. Let's shop for animals, more animals beyond what's available in the clip art. Some beautiful shells, ducks flying, more exotic animals, and it goes on and on and on. Now notice here that they are selling individual, they're selling individual, but they also sell sets, package sets. Let's go into projects. Individual models. Projects. Okay. They sell them in sets. And some of these, especially in the religious sets, can be very expensive, $300-400. They've animal sets. I had a friend that was a pool player, and so I bought a set of pool ornaments to create an object for him. Ladies love the flowers, so we bought some flowered sets. So these are all available for sale from Vectric, from Design and Make, Vectric Corporation. When they sell them, they keep a record of the sale, and you can always go back and re-download the files should you need to. I've chosen over the year to buy several sets and several individual models, and I have made them available as a part of the downloads from my website, and I'm going to go to Joe's Boat really quick. Well, I always like to go to my website. But when you sign in to my website, and each of you should have a log on now, your email address for both the user ID and the password. Okay. The CNC files you'll find somewhere down here, designs and inlay pictures. I'm getting one slide ahead of myself. What I've done for the site is upload the CRV file for every project that I've thought about doing, which of course includes the projects that I have actually cut and completed. So everyone here is welcome to download complete project files. Don't assume up front that they are perfect. Download them, but don't hesitate to thoroughly go through all of the details of the file before you do a cut. You downloaded as a homework assignment a couple of weeks ago, a composite file of all of the design and make and clip art. And I can more easily get to that from one of the copies of the Vectric. I bragged earlier about everything being perfect starting the night off. I saw it as an omen, and that has come to pass. I'm going to have to clear out everything.
I think there's a big hammer over in the shop.
Pardon?
We could fix that.
Mallet?
There's a big hammer over in the shop. We could fix that.
No. Okay, let's. Luckily, we will have a box blank to work from in the history. And from here, I can go back into the clip art file and go into the design and make subfolder. Now, when you downloaded the zip file a couple of sessions ago, you did get all of this information, so this should be available on your PC. Notice I've got some billiards, I've got some grapes, I've got a waterside with a lot of ships, and there's a compass rose here for those who might want to do a nautical design. There's some schooners, and there's some historical battleships going to you and from you. The front of the box and the back of the box. So that is overview of design and make. Should you choose to bring down a model from them, if you want to pass it along to me, I'll post it on the website for those who need it, those who might want to use a component from there. Okay, so that is a combination of two of the plans, an overview of what's available on Joe's boat and an overview of what's available from design and make. Let's see on the commitments so that's design and make. I told you last week that it's feasible to export a model, or excuse me, a three-dimensional object from Fusion 360, and I talked about how that could be used inside of Fusion, inside of design and make. Let's just go through that process real quick so that you've seen it. I've got the basic file that I had the basic 10 by 10 workpiece. 2 weeks ago, we looked at importing a bitmap and converting that bitmap into a vector. Tonight, let's look at importing a three-dimensional vector file. And if you look at the four icons across the top, refresh everybody's memory. The first one on this line is the setup program, and the typical file interface program. Import a bitmap, and then the last one over is import a vector file. If I import it, there's a long list of file formats beginning at STL, and you can see as you go look across horizontally here the three character suffixes of all the file types that Vectric's capable of importing. Tonight I want to start simply with an STL file. Before doing that though, if Fusion is available, I'd just like to quickly show what I did in Fusion. In Fusion, I simply set my timeline back to where I only have the left side of a box. Okay, pretty straightforward, left side of a box. In Fusion, I just went and exported it. I exported it, and I chose, he doesn't like the file name. And it's a non-standard Windows file name, and he's just telling us up front. I chose the export in STL file format. Okay. Paul, last week we talked about the STL file format, and it happens to be a surface modeling system where a series of triangles connected together define the outer surface and any inner surface of a three-dimensional object. Okay. But I just called it simply a boxside.stl. I'm not going to repeat that here, but I'm going back over to Vectric. And I'm going to open the basic boxside.stl file. Now that's bringing a three-dimensional object into Vectric. And of course, at this point in time, Vectric knows very little about the dimensions of this object. It just knows, looking at the STL data, that the shape, and it knows where it has a mortise cut in it. Okay. There are tools available in the Vectric software to adjust the dimensions of this file we've imported, of this object we've imported, to set it up inside of Vectric with the right thickness and other dimensions. Okay. It turns out that your one of the homework assignments tonight will be a Vectric presentation on doing just that for a little statue. And the statue happens to be, and let me back out of here for a second. Okay, I'm going to do another load using the same icon, but this time I'm going to select a file that ends in the OBJ format. Okay, so now I've brought in a little statue that happens to be of a marlin jumping out of the water. And the same process would be ahead of me as with the box side. I now have to adjust this model to where it would fit where I want it in a piece of material, and then cut it as a two-sided object. Okay, so the Vectric video to import this particular object and convert it into a two-sided cut is a part of the homework tonight. Okay, so I've demonstrated the practicality of taking a model out of Fusion 360 and bringing it into Vectric, and the practicality of grabbing an object from industry someplace and bringing it into Vectric. And then the details of the homework tonight will take you through the process. Once you get it into Vectric, how do you go about making it into a tool path? Now, keep in mind, as you go through this particular step, we're dealing with a level of detail beyond what we've done so far for our boxes. Okay, this is advanced work. This is for not the second, maybe the third project. Okay, but now we can look at it now and see what we want to study in the future. Okay. Okay, so I might cut that myself. It's been a couple of years since I first saw the process, and I've never actually tackled a cut. Maybe that's in my future in the next several weeks. We'll see. Going back to my guidelines of what we want to speak about tonight, I've talked about vector imports, and I've shown you the available box designs on joesboat.org. By the way, a high percentage of those pre-configured boxes are three-dimensional work. Okay, a high percentage of that. I promised earlier that we would talk about manipulating 3D models and doing some merges. And that's a perfect intro for us to talk about the anniversary box. Keep in mind, we've all seen this one so far. It's just a little box that's not yet glued together. This is the size of the box that we're all working on here. Other boxes that we've done in these classes have been significantly larger than this, and the anniversary box fits that pattern. Let me start with the ends, and I'll pass this around. The ends, and there's some cleanup work left to be done here. That just shows a rose in a three-dimensional rose on each end of the box. And here is the cut of the box front, back, and top. Here we have on the box front, a floral design. I picked it, I thought it was appropriate for a wedding here on the front of the box. And then for the box top, I chose a design coming from a video that's out there on YouTube. It creates a dish and puts the rings that are available as a clip art object in the dish. Now this is a merger. This is a merger of two components. Let me back up. A merger of two clip art components. The rings and the dome. Okay? And in the clip art it comes as a dome, but in the modeling tools that we're going to touch on, you have the ability to turn the dome over and make it a dish. Okay? So let's pass this one around. Here, let's start it here also. And let me repeat what I've covered. For the front of the box, that's just a standard floral pattern, from Design and Make. Okay? And the top of the box are standard clip art objects that have been merged together to have the rings exist in the dish. Okay? And as you look at it, you'll notice that on the top of the design, on the box top, you have text that's cut into the side of the dish. Text, and this is a capability of the textual tools built into VCarve of placing text either on or inside a three-dimensional object. Okay, you video going on in the background here.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. What Rosa asked for? Yes, you say yes.
Now looking to the future, this particular rose in a dish came to me from Design and Make. But there are so many floral designs available when you think about maybe cutting one of these for a family member. You could manipulate the ends, replace it with other 3D objects.
Like a picture.
Mm-hmm. Like a picture. Chris made
what wood species is
Oh, this is spalted maple. And this is the wood that woodcrafters had a special buy. They must have had thousands of feet of it. And they sold it at a rather low price for the species of wood. And it turns out, they told me up front that there was some wormholes. And if you look at this wood, notice that I think the spalted is the dark grain that runs through the wood. Notice the worms only go into the spalted wood. They bypass the hard stuff. Okay, so we've seen the design, we see the rings in the dish. Now keep in mind, I did this work on VCarve Pro version 10 about 2 years ago when I brought it forward. Before we get into the the tools to do the merger and manipulate the three-dimensional design, let me fess up front. If you were to take the dimensions plugged into the software for the 3D objects in version and try to manipulate it in version 12, it's not going to work for you. If you choose to use this software, I recommend no changes to the dimensions of the merger between the rings and the dome and the dish. Use it as is. You'll cut it as you see here. Otherwise, I suggest you start from scratch and do your own dome and ring merger. But that's rather easy after seeing some of the videos you'll view tonight or this week. Okay, so that's the overview of the anniversary box. Let's get into a little bit of the details. That's not it. Okay, just to synchronize here, we've got the floral pattern on the ends of the box, and simply an oval around it so we can V-carve a ring around it. Now this is simply loading that design and make object, and which comes with the dome, and similar steps to what I demonstrated earlier. When I go over to the tool paths for these two ends, oh shit.
Technical term?
Yep. Maybe we'll create a few tool paths here. I was worried about filling up the time tonight, and those worries were nothing. Let's go ahead and create a tool path. Let's see. Keep in mind there are two sheets in this file. We covered sheets 2 weeks ago. I have a sheet for the box ends, and I have a separate sheet for the top, front, and back. Here I'm just simply going to select the two roses, and I'm going to open up a 3D roughing. And here I use selected level. Level 1. They're both in level 1. I have level selected here. Let's see what happens when I calculate. Okay. This is the roughing tool path. And I preview it, showing you, just a gross outline. If I close out and I go to the 3D finish, and I go into 2D, and again I have I've selected level 1, and I'd go through the calculate, and then I do the preview. Okay, it's going through. Now there were some questions earlier, and I can do this for either the finish or the rough cut. I think it's the same. Let's do the finish. The two patterns that we discussed are offset and raster. Now, raster, of course, is the one that's going to go back and forth, and you can choose the angle. Here I chose 40 degrees, but let's choose 90. And that should change the direction it goes across the wood. And let's go ahead and calculate. But before that, let's calculate. And now this is a finished tool path, remember. Let's go ahead and slow down the cut. And then do the preview. I didn't slow it enough. Maybe I did. Let's speed it back up so it'll quickly finish. What happened is in my, I did not reset the preview. Let's go ahead and repeat that. Let's slow it down. Let's say preview selected tool path. And now you can see how the cut is occurring. It's at the 90-degree level, and it's going to go right to left over the entire design. You can see the rows beginning to appear here. Because I'm doing this in the simulator, I really don't care about the rough cut. I don't have any, there's no chance I'm going to dull or break this bit. I mean, it's going to occur.
The virtual.
Okay, so of course, let's speed it up. Now, just for demo purposes, I'm going to redo it, and I'm going to choose I'm going to choose the offset pattern. Notice it's showing a circular pattern. And I'm going to calculate it. I'm going to reset the preview again. And now let's go ahead and preview that tool path. So make sure it's slow enough here. You can see it starting from the center, working its way out. Okay. Don't believe the predicted machining time for these tool paths. Multiplied by 3 or 4. These are long print jobs, very long jobs.
Is there an advantage of one over the other?
I haven't found it. I have not found it.
Speed isn't one of them.
Maybe if you use both of them, when you go to the cleanup, is where you might see the differences. The circular patterns, you might not need to sand as much with the circular patterns as with the diagonals, but I truly don't know. Okay, so here we are. We're just cutting straightforward design and make components. It gets more interesting when we get over to the box top. And let's close out of here. Let's go back over to, from the box sides, let's go to a different sheet and get into the box top front and back. Here we are in the 3D view. And here's where we do not have, let's get one. We do have tool paths. I'm going to start in the three-dimensional view because we've covered already several of the controls. When I select in 3D view and do a second select, I have a similar set of controls that I've already discussed. Here, the pattern for the rings, let's get some detail here. I got 3 inches high, the rings, and I've got, 2.6 inches high and 3 inches wide. That is the component for the rings. And as I said earlier, this is just a standard clip art that you can easily load. Down below, if I look at the details of this, that component is 0.625 inches high. And if I look at the total for the rings is 0.125 high. Doesn't make sense, right? Doesn't make sense. I don't try and modify them. This is the point I made earlier. Just accept them at face value. If I look, now I'm just showing the component for the rings itself. If I move away and I focus on the dome, which is inverted to become a dish, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Here I have a width of 8.96 inches and I have a height of 5.55 inches. And then if I look, I'll select them again, if I look at the thickness, it says 1.825 inches. Don't believe that. Don't believe it. But it works. It works. And if I look at the total, it's 0.4 inches. Okay? It works. Don't. Earlier, when we were talking about the eagle, okay, and I went through these controls, I skipped a control called the base height. Okay, now think this through. For a given component coming from Vectric, it's going to have a standard width and height, and it's going to have a standard thickness. Okay, now placing that in the thickness of the wood, I used the defaults earlier, which work, by the way. And for a single component, it's rather easy. Now I'm beginning to merge components, so I need to think of the base height of the rings relative to the base height of the dome or the dish when it's inverted, and manipulate them to where I get the rings positioned correctly relative to the other component. Okay. Now that is the art of playing with the modeling tools, and of course purely working from version 12, it is more logical than what you're seeing here from my prior work. The base height of 0.25 might make sense, or a base height of 0.375 might make sense. Halfway up the thickness of the wood, okay? And then on top of that, the height of the component itself, okay? You see the tools we're going to manipulate to build the composite component that you want for your project. Now, for simplicity's sake, for me, I got to make it as simple as possible. I'm choosing to work with 2 components. But there are no limits. You can put together designs with multiple components. Say you're not dealing with a box, but you're dealing with a plaque. Yes, you can load that plaque up with little components, which the videos tonight will do. They will walk you through the steps of building a composite set of components from multiple objects.
Joe, you haven't talked about the lettering there. Since it is now a bowl-shaped surface, do you have to do anything additionally to the letters?
Let me talk to that a little bit. I will talk to that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. 2 simple components. We're merging them together, getting the relative heights together. The tools to accomplish that are completes the total set for modeling. You heard me speak of layer levels earlier, right? I just use level 1, and when I was dealing with the eagle picture, okay. But I promised to get into the fully leveling and how the domes become dishes, and how you choose the order that the mergers occur. Let's start out with the simple leveling here. Notice we have 4 levels? 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have starting at the bottom, and as with most things Vectric, we work from the bottom up. Here I have the dome itself, dome dish 30. Let me slip over to clip art, domes and dishes, domes parentheses dishes. This happens to be dome dish 30, and there's a 45 and a 60 and a 90. So I'm going from that to that to that to tighter, you know. And they all come out of the box as domes. In addition to the round ones, we can have some square ones, some rectangular ones, some round flat ones instead of the 30 degree. They all work the same way, but with different dimensions. I chose the 30 degree dome for this one, and by the way, it's probably the most common in actual practice. When I look in the component tree, the dome dish 30, right beside it, there's a U. When a dome comes out of the box, that is going to be an inverted U. The act of turning it over inverts the dome to become a dish. And this particular one does not have any color to it. It's simply black and white. When you, and there, by the way, if I go back over to Now here I get version 11 versus 12 issues. And instead of going to the left-hand set of controls for the currently selected okay, the rings. Notice the rings themselves, instead of the plain black and white, we have the color, the greenish color, greenish yellow color. As I have a inverted dish, the color indicates this is a merger of a component on top of a dish. And there's conversation in tonight's homework that will get more detail there in the flat inserted versus the merging in. Okay, this is the new method of manipulating the details of a component. In addition to specifying how I want that component to be recognized as either a base unit or a merger, I can also fade and tilt. The tilt gives you some very, very tiny degree movement of a component up and down. Is up and down the right word? No, back and forth. Technically, they believe they can make one end of a component higher than its normal position. And the fade, of course, is also not using the full component, but getting rid of some density there. Let's close out of this, and I want to fully close it. Go back over to the components tree. And here it's the same thing. If I go focusing on the wedding rings, I've selected it as I did earlier, but now instead of having the pop-up dialog box, I've got all the dialogue here in the left-hand column. Now, for an individual component, I have a selection as to how it's to be merged in. But notice they sit in layers. I got layers, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The layers themselves, the levels themselves, also have a combined mode control. Add and subtract. Add would be the upside down U. Subtract would be the U itself. I have a merge, which is I think that is an upside down U, and I have a low, which is and I forget which one. Where earlier we looked at the icons, the U with or without color, or the upside down U with or without color. Here we are naming at the layer level, we're using add, subtract, merge, and low instead of the 4 different icons. And we're adding the term multiply. Between layers, in this particular design, there is no multiply between the layers. They're all pretty straightforward inverted U going up. But in the homework tonight, there will be conversation about using the multiplier effect between layers, or between, excuse me, levels, layers, between levels, there will be a multiply effect that can manipulate the depth of a component so that it stays within a particular set of parameters. And I'm not sure I can fully explain it to your satisfaction, so I'm going to say, wait for the video tonight. And I'll point that video out. You know, I lied earlier, and I'll plead memory over time issues here. I said that the floral pattern was a standard design and make component of floral in a dish, and the software tonight reminds me that that is in fact a merger of a oval dish and a set of floral pattern, a component with a floral pattern, and we merged it together. Now keep in mind, as you look up the levels, I've got level 1, which applies to the box top. I've got level 2, which applies to the front of the box. I've got a level 3, which is inert, has no components. And I've got level 4, which contains a zero plane. The zero plane is talked about in many videos, but in Vectric documentation, it has one sentence. Okay. There is a zero plane. I'm serious. I'm serious. The videos you'll watch tonight will describe the video plane as a reference point for the surface of your composite model, and is to help the software understand where that model should end. You'll hear those words tonight. You will not find that backed up in documentation. Okay. All right. So we have covered the level structure. Through talking to the level structure, you can see how it's used. I've put a composite model at one level for the box top, and a second composite at a separate level for the box front. And then the software, as it merges things together, will pick out levels as needed by the tool paths that we create. And here I get over to the 3D, to the tool paths for the anniversary box. The 3D roughing 1, finish, and finish top. Let's take a look at the 3D roughing 1. Okay. It is selected vectors, and there is a faint magenta line around husband and wife, and there is a faint magenta line around the floral pattern. So I have a tool path that does all of the roughing work for the front of the box and the top of the box. And let's close out of here, and let's go to the 3D finish. Here we chose to do a 3D finish for the front of the box. And if you see, we are choosing selected level here. So so anything on level 2 in the tree will be handled in this tool path. Back out of here and go back into the tool path, the finished tool path for the top of the box. Again, we're doing selected level, and I think you're going to see this is level 1. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and exit out of here, close out, the recompute everything. I've got an error. It doesn't like the total thickness of the model, and I'm going to see if I can cut it down to 0.625. Apply. And it took it. So close out. And let's say OK here. Recompute everything. And let's go ahead, again, we're recomputing everything. Go back into the preview tools. Reset the preview. Preview all tool paths. It's doing the rough cut. I'll speed it up just a little bit. The rough cut. You're doing the finish work. Speed it up a little bit more. Now, a question earlier had to do with the text, the way it's cut into the side of the component. If I focus on text in 3D shell, I can see that husband and wife is selected, the date 2025. Here, this is a straightforward textual tool path with one exception. Project tool path into 3D model. Okay, so I'm telling the tool path that he has to figure out the slope of the dish in order to cut the text. Okay, we have, I think I've completed all of the tasks that I had planned. We've covered the anniversary box. It is a provided three-dimensional file included in the class folder on joesboat.org. And I've talked about the 3D toolpath generation, and we've demonstrated that. The other thing that could have been on the venue tonight was a walkthrough and some work in the wood shop. That time was not available, so we'll pick up there next week. My goal is to take one of the cuts that we have and demonstrate breaking it apart, getting rid of the tabs, fitting the box together, all of the steps that you would need to take, including some clean out of the 3D carving, to get ready to assemble a box. We're not going to actual glue a box next week, but we will cover all of the dry fit, that's needed. And with that, let's take a look at homework for tonight. There's 4 videos on 3D modeling. There's one that focuses on the component tree and assembles multiple components, placing each component on the tree for that particular design. The last one is models in a dish, and that's one I would recommend that you handle these videos in the top to bottom sequence. Work down, because they do build upon each other. They make some assumptions that you know information from other videos. The one particular homework detail did not reach this PowerPoint cell, and I'll follow up with an email on that assignment. And then the 2 bottom lines work on completing the desired box, the design work, and then schedule some time with me to actually do the first cut on the machine. At this point in time, I mentioned earlier that Bob and Sam have gone through the process already. So Bob's more on his own now. And Sam, likewise, is more on his own. Okay. Of course, I'm available if he's got any questions along the way. It's 6 o'clock. Yeah, 5:58. Look forward to seeing everybody next week, and look forward to seeing you in the wood shop. Thank you. Thank you very much.